There is a moment in every human life that most people fear more than failure, more than rejection, more than pain. That moment is being alone. Not alone in a room with music playing, not alone while scrolling a phone, not alone with distractions. I'm talking about real loneliness, silence, no escape, just you and yourself. Most people avoid this moment at all costs. They fill every second with noise, people, opinions, validation. Because deep down, they are afraid of what they might meet when everything goes quiet. But here's the truth no one tells you. Loneliness is not what breaks you. Loneliness reveals you. And most people don't want to be revealed. We are called human beings for a reason. Not human doings. Not human reactions. Human beings. That means something powerful. Every other creature on this planet lives by compulsion. They act because they must. They react because they are programmed. But you have the ability to simply be, to sit still, to observe your thoughts, to choose your actions consciously. And that ability only shows itself when you are alone. There's an old teaching that says, "It is better to walk alone than to walk with a fool." That statement is not about arrogance, it's about awareness. Because walking with the wrong people, the wrong mindset, the wrong influences, is far more dangerous than walking alone. Being together is not always strength. Sometimes being together is a distraction. Sometimes it's a nuisance. Sometimes it's a way to avoid responsibility. Loneliness forces responsibility on you. No one else to blame. No one else to hide behind. No excuses. Just you. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most people are not truly one individual. They are divided inside themselves. When things go right, they say, "I did it." When things go wrong, they say, "It wasn't really me." My ego, my past, my circumstances, my trauma. There's always someone else to blame, even if that someone lives inside their own mind. But strength begins when you stop dividing yourself. When you say, "If I succeed, it's me. If I fail, it's me. If I'm kind, it's me. If I'm cruel, it's me." No escape routes. No psychological loopholes. Just ownership. And loneliness is where ownership is forged. When you are alone long enough, you realize something terrifying and liberating at the same time. There is only one person inside you. Not a hero and a villain. Not a good self and a bad self. Just you. Capable of both. And when you accept that truth, transformation begins. Because now you're no longer fighting shadows. You're working on reality. Most people think loneliness makes them weak because it feels uncomfortable, but discomfort is not weakness. Discomfort is friction, and friction creates strength. Just like muscles don't grow without resistance, your mind doesn't evolve without silence. Your character doesn't sharpen without solitude. Your discipline doesn't form when everyone is watching. It forms when no one cares. This is why crowds often act without thinking. Groups react emotionally. Masses follow impulses. But the individual, the one who can sit alone without losing control of their mind, that person becomes dangerous. Not violent, not destructive. Dangerous in clarity. Dangerous in discipline. Dangerous in self-mastery. Here's something most people never realize. Human evolution is no longer biological. It's conscious. You don't need millions of years to evolve. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. If you are willing, you can evolve today, right now. There is no ceiling on what a human being can become. There is only a bottom line, And most people never rise above it because they are afraid to face themselves alone. Loneliness is not a punishment. It's an invitation. An invitation to ask one brutal question. How can I be just a little better than I was yesterday? Not perfect, not extraordinary, just better. That question, asked consistently in solitude, builds something unstoppable. Most people come together for their needs, some for comfort, some for entertainment, some because they cannot stand being alone. But coming together without self-awareness creates more chaos than solutions. That's why relationships fail. That's why teams collapse. That's why societies feel empty despite being crowded. Because individuals never learned how to be whole alone. If you don't know how to stand by yourself, togetherness becomes dependency. But if you master solitude, togetherness becomes power. And that's the difference between loneliness that weakens and loneliness that transforms. Right now, if you feel alone, this is not life abandoning you. This is life preparing you, separating you, sharpening you, stripping away what is unnecessary, so that when you return to the world, you return different, calmer, stronger, unshakable. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of your strength. There is something loneliness gives you that no crowd ever will. Clarity. When you are alone, there is no one to perform for, no one to impress, no one to please, and that is exactly when your real life begins. Because discipline is not built in public. Discipline is built in silence. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is motivation. They think it's excitement. They think it's pushing hard when they feel inspired. That's not discipline. Discipline is doing what must be done when no one is watching and you don't feel like it. And loneliness forces that decision on you. No cheering crowd. No accountability partner. No social pressure. Just a choice. Do I show up for myself or not? In solitude, excuses lose their power. There's no one to blame for your lack of progress. No one to distract you from your thoughts. No one to validate your weakness. That's why loneliness feels heavy, because it exposes the gap between who you are and who you could be. And most people would rather escape that gap than cross it. But if you stay, if you don't run, something changes. Your mind begins to slow down. Your thoughts stop fighting for attention. You start to see patterns. You notice how your emotions rise and fall. You notice how often your mind tries to escape discomfort. You notice how addicted you are to noise. And in that awareness, control is born. Solitude teaches you something fundamental. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one who observes them. That realization alone is the foundation of inner strength. Because once you see your mind clearly, it stops controlling you. You stop reacting. You start choosing. And choice is power. Loneliness also builds emotional independence. When you are alone, you are forced to regulate your own emotions. No one is there to cheer you up. No one is there to calm you down. No one is there to rescue you from your sadness or anger. At first, this feels cruel, but over time, it becomes liberating. You realize, right, I don't need external approval to feel stable. I don't need constant reassurance to move forward. I don't need someone else to give me meaning. That's strength. The strongest people in the world are not emotionally dependent on circumstances. They don't collapse when things go quiet. They don't panic when they are misunderstood. They don't lose themselves when they are alone. They have learned how to sit with themselves without breaking. And that skill is rare. Loneliness also sharpens focus. When distractions disappear, your priorities become obvious. You stop chasing everything. You stop wasting energy on meaningless battles. You stop caring about opinions that don't matter. Your life becomes simpler but sharper. You know what deserves your time. You know what doesn't. And clarity creates momentum. This is where real work begins. Not the kind of work people applaud. Not the kind that looks impressive on social media. The invisible work. Early mornings, silent nights, repetitions no one sees, decisions no one thanks you for. This is the work that loneliness makes possible. Because when you are alone, there is nothing left to do but improve yourself. Understand this? Isolation doesn't mean you are weak. It often means you are becoming. Life removes noise so you can hear yourself think. Life removes people so you can learn self-reliance. Life removes comfort so you can build resilience. And if you resist this process, you suffer. But if you accept it, you evolve. Most people want the rewards of strength without paying the price of solitude. They want confidence without self-reflection. They want discipline without discomfort. They want purpose without silence. But it doesn't work that way. Loneliness is the price, and strength is the reward. But your sapiens, this is why solitude is not meant to last forever. It is a phase, a refining phase, a sharpening phase, a preparation phase. You are not being isolated to stay small. You are being isolated to grow. So that when you return to the world, you return with something most people lack: inner authority. You no longer seek permission to be who you are. You no longer beg for validation. You no longer fear standing alone because you've done it before. And once you master solitude, togetherness becomes a choice, not a need. You no longer walk with people to escape yourself. You walk with them to build something meaningful. That's the difference between weakness and conscious strength. If you are alone right now, don't waste this moment. Don't numb it. Don't escape it. Don't complain about it. Use it. This is where discipline is built. This is where clarity is formed. This is where power takes root. And in part next, we'll talk about what happens when you step back into the world after being forged in solitude, and why people will feel your presence before you say a single word. There comes a moment when loneliness is no longer heavy. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. You didn't escape solitude. You didn't numb it. You didn't drown it in distractions. You stayed. And because you stayed, something inside you changed. When you step back into the world after solitude, people notice. Not because you announce it. Not because you explain it. They feel it. Your presence is calmer. Your words are fewer, but heavier. Your reactions are controlled. You don't rush to prove yourself. You don't argue for validation. You don't panic when misunderstood, because you already face the hardest judge of all, yourself. Loneliness gives you something rare: inner authority. You don't borrow confidence from others. You don't wait for approval to move. You don't collapse when you stand alone in your decisions. You trust yourself, and trust is power. This is where most people get confused. They think strength looks loud. They think power looks aggressive. They think confidence needs to be announced. But real strength is quiet. It doesn't chase attention. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't react emotionally. It stands firm. And that firmness was built in moments no one witnessed. When you were alone, you learned to sit with discomfort. So now pressure doesn't shake you. When you were alone, you learned to face your flaws honestly. So now criticism doesn't destroy you. When you were alone, you learned self-discipline. So now chaos doesn't control you. Loneliness didn't make you cold. It made you centered. You also return with boundaries. You no longer allow everyone access to your energy. You no longer tolerate nonsense for the sake of belonging. You no longer confuse attention with connection. You choose carefully, because you know the cost of your peace, and you're not willing to lose it. Here's the paradox. The more comfortable you become alone, the more valuable you become to others. Not because you need them, but because you don't. You bring stability, you bring clarity, you bring direction, and people feel safe around someone who is not desperate. This is when loneliness completes its purpose. It doesn't isolate you forever. It prepares you. So that when you come together with others, it's not out of fear, but out of choice. And conscious togetherness is powerful. You now understand something most never do. Togetherness without self-mastery creates chaos. But togetherness after solitude creates impact. Teams become stronger. Relationships become healthier. Leadership becomes natural because you are no longer divided inside. You are one. Remember this. Loneliness was never your enemy. It was your training ground. It stripped away illusions. It burned off weakness. It forced you to grow up emotionally and mentally. And now, you carry that growth everywhere you go. People will ask you, what changed? And you won't have an easy answer. Because the truth is, everything changed quietly. In silence. In discipline. In reflection. In moments when no one cared. Those moments built you. So if you are still in solitude right now, don't rush the process. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. And forging takes time. One day, you will walk into rooms without needing to announce yourself. You will face challenges without losing your balance. You will hear opinions without losing your identity, because you know who you are. And that certainty came from standing alone when it mattered. Loneliness didn't make you weak. It made you unshakable. It taught you to rely on yourself, to regulate your emotions, to choose discipline over comfort, to choose growth over noise, and that strength, no one can take it from you. So walk alone if you must. Not out of bitterness, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Because sometimes the path to becoming powerful is quiet, lonely, and unseen, but when you arrive complete.